I've started a career, so I'm working on the junior WRC car. Let's check my online rank. Top rank. My rank. 9th. Oh, I see what's happening here. This doesn't show the rank of a slower car. This only shows the your top time in whatever car you've driven, and it's showing the WRC car. So we don't get to see the leaderboard. Anyway, this is my time. You can compare that to some other leaderboard somewhere, I don't know. Replay. So this car is a front-wheel drive car, and there's particular philosophies needed to set up the car to perform the way you want, because only the front wheels are driven, and I'll get into that when we get to the settings page. The rear spring, though, I will talk about, is very stiff. But I'm driving on this stage. I was going to drive on Horka, my usual testing stage, but I'm driving on this stage to show that even with the stiff spring, it is able to handle the bumps. And the technique to drive with this front-wheel drive car is to let the car steer while you're off throttle, and then use the power to keep the car stable through the turn. So dip throttle, rotate, power, and then you can modulate the rotation with the throttle, more throttle, less throttle. And I actually don't use the handbrake at all on this stage, even through here. I probably could have used the handbrake there. I understeered a little bit. And through these corners, I'm just pulsing the throttle. I brake to slow down the car, and then pulse the throttle. As you lift off throttle, the car will rotate, and then as you get back on power, the car will stabilize. The brakes are also more rearward biased, and I'm using the front differential to keep the car more stable on the brakes than with a more open front differential on the braking lock. A little too much rotation on the entry. Car slowed down too much and I couldn't get the power down. Need to keep the slip angles to a minimum, enough to keep the car turning, but also shallow enough to keep the power delivery good. A little bit wide here too. So in WRC 8, I don't recall being capable of adjusting the suspension and the overall settings for the junior cars. I think the settings were locked, which made the early career almost unbearable. The gearing was way too short, the differentials were way too open, and the suspension was way too soft. But hopefully in WRC 9, the early career, which I did not skip straight to WRC 2 and 3. I'm doing the junior career, obviously, because I'm adjusting the settings on the junior car. But I want to gauge the difficulty in the junior career. I have my career set to 100 currently. And I have not done a rally yet. On this downhill, I like to be in a high gear rather than bouncing off the rev limiter in a lower gear, or constantly shifting through the gears as I speed up and slow down. Had a moment right there. Didn't get the car pointed into the corner early enough. Probably could have used the handbrake in this corner and the previous corner before that one. And the settings. So this is a G1, 2, and 3, 123, however you want to call it. The car is not fast enough to constitute having 3 different settings. So one gear set is enough for every stage. Let's see, springs. This is how stiff the rear spring is. 72,500. It's a 7.25 kilogram spring, which is really stiff for such a light car, especially on dirt. And 30,000, a 3 kilogram spring for the front, mostly because the ride height is limited to 20. If I could raise the ride height or get more suspension travel with a softer spring, I would have a softer spring in the front. And then dampers, really soft, really reactive to small bumps. Basically the same suspension as the WRC car. And the front damper is the same, but the rear rebound damper is the same. What am I trying to say? The front rebound damper is the same as the WRC car. The rear rebound damper, man, I cannot talk. The rear rebound damper is at 7,000 to prevent the rear end from bouncing around. Any stiffer and the car will understeer. It could be, what do you call it? It could be softer, but there's no benefit. I don't think it's beyond critical damping at 7,000, so it returns to neutral faster at 7, so it's better at 7. And then, also the rear spring, it's as stiff as it'll go without starting to understeer again. So back to what I was talking about earlier in the video, is front-wheel drive cars, just take out the anti-roll bar completely and get the rear stiffness from the spring only. And if the spring is too soft in the rear on a front-wheel drive car, the car will understeer. But also, if the spring in the rear is too stiff in the front-wheel drive car, it will also understeer. And there's a specific spring rate for any particular type of front-wheel drive car that works to produce oversteer the best. I don't know why that is. I haven't really figured out why that works. I just, from trying different spring settings, I found out that if it's too stiff it understeers and if it's too soft it understeers. And I found that this number right here is the Goldilocks number. Cambers, trying to get the cambers near 1 degree camber from looking at the tires and the replays. I lowered the rear ride height to be less, to reduce the rake. I don't need so much rake on the car. There's enough ground clearance at 17. Differentials, I do not know why there's a central or rear preload on this on the setting sheet. I don't think it does anything because it's probably not on the car, but I've set them to 0 because I want to. The braking is at 94. Ideally, a differential is best around 50% for not allowing a tire to either lock up or spin up if it's a braking tire or a driven tire. But in this case, for braking, I'm trying to create more stability because anything higher than 50% causes too much understeer. And so I've put the brake bias to be further rearward and create stability with the inside front tire locking, or what should I say, not locking? Anyway, it becomes more stable at this particular number. And then 100 on acceleration. I don't want the tires spinning up on the inside of the corners. And preload is, I could actually change this. I suggest changing it yourself as well to get more rotation off throttle. There is enough as it is, but you can get more rotation off throttle with a higher preload number, but effectively less preload lock. Brakes, already talked about the brakes. And this is the gearing for all 3 gear sets of 1, 2, and 3. It should work on every stage because even on the short stages it maxes out around 110 anyway, and then on the long stages it doesn't go any faster than 110 because it doesn't have enough horsepower. And I've made the gearing as close as possible, essentially. From each gear spacing is separated by 1/10 because on the dirt or snow the front tires is going to spin up. It's still slip limited, but having a taller first gear ratio allows the first gear to be usable instead of basically for rolling starts. Essentially, you can just get the turbo spooling and drop the clutch and the car will go, whether it be off the starting line or out of a tight hairpin. And that's it. Till the next one.